First thing I want to talk about is what's going on in the Middle East and this extension of a deal now for a 7th full day. The humanitarian pause now over the first 6 days has seen more than 100 hostages released and returned to their families, and a significant surge in humanitarian assistance into Gaza, several hundred trucks over the last week, which is important.
As National Security Council Administrator, or Coordinator, I should say, John Kirby announced earlier today, Israel and Hamas managed to reach a last-minute deal that extended the pause in fighting for one more day to allow for the release of more hostages and prisoners. Now, we'll get back to that hostage and prisoner exchange part of this story in just a moment, but sadly, shortly after Israel and Hamas reached that deal to pause fighting for another day, gunmen carried out a deadly attack in Jerusalem, killing at least 3. Here are more details on that.
This morning, that ceasefire between Israel and Hamas extended for a 7th day. And just minutes later, this shooting attack in Jerusalem. In the surveillance video circulating online, you can see this car pull up to a bus stop. 2 Palestinian men from Jerusalem that Israel says were affiliated with Hamas begin firing. In another video circulating online, you can hear the dozens of rounds fired. People at the bus stop fleeing for safety. Within seconds, off-duty soldiers returning fire, killing the assailants. 3 Israelis were killed, 16 wounded.
So I want to just say that in this particular story, there's been a lot of inconsistency in reporting. So different outlets are reporting different numbers of injured individuals. CNN, for instance, says 7. Reuters said at least 8. So when it comes to the exact number of people who were injured, obviously take the reporting with a grain of salt because we don't know for sure yet. However, Hamas said the attackers were its members. So they have taken responsibility for this. And its armed wing claimed responsibility for the attack in response to the occupation's crimes of killing children and women in Gaza. And so I'm sure that, gunning down people will persuade the Israelis to reconsider their approach in this war. So why don't we hear from Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's Israel's national security minister. What did he have to say in response to this? This event proves again how we must not show weakness, that we must speak to Hamas only through rifle scopes, only through war. So more people are gonna die. We already know it's coming. We already know what to expect. There have been, even with the ceasefire, there have been some violent exchanges between the Israelis and Hamas militants. And before we pivot back to the hostage situation and who's been released recently, I wanted to get your thoughts on the part of the story we just talked about, Cenk, Hamas opening fire and gunning down people.
So, I mean, I can't imagine a bigger set of idiots. The Palestinian people are being brutalized in Gaza, having these 2,000 bombs dropped on their heads. You finally get a pause in the fighting, and what do? During that pause, you go and kill people.
Exactly.
Goddamn idiots, right? Just the dumbest people alive, let alone the immorality of it. And then how do you complain? Like, we get to complain about civilians killed on both sides. And we get to be harsh about Hamas and Israel because we're objective and we're covering what's actually happening. But what right does Hamas have to complain about anything? Like, you ask for a pause, you get a pause, and then you morons go and shoot people in the middle of the pause, thereby losing any high ground. Hamas never had any moral high ground, but losing moral high ground on behalf of Palestinians, which you don't speak for, and these actions are so dumb and immoral. I just can't stand how irrational and stupid they are. So terrible actions in Jerusalem, and I feel terrible for the civilians hurt there.
Now, luckily, more and more of the hostages are getting released, and that is the reason why the so-called humanitarian pause, which I have trouble saying that, the pause in fighting continues, and this again is the 7th full day of that pause. Now, Hamas on Wednesday night released 16 people held hostage in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli authorities said, pushing the number of freed captives past 100, and in return, Israel a few hours later set free 30 more more Palestinian prisoners. So I wanna go to this next video and explain what we're seeing in it. So in this video that you're watching, 21-year-old French-Israeli Mia Shem, who we've talked about on the show before, she was in one of those hostage videos, was released today and reunited with her family. She was taken while at that music festival and held hostage by Hamas for 65 days. Here are some other hostages who have been freed so far. Let's take a look.
A second American freed overnight, 49-year-old American dual citizen and mother of 3, Liat Bainan, photographed in her first conversation with family. She was among 16 hostages reunited with families overnight. Liat kidnapped from kibbutz near Oz 55 days ago with her husband Aviv, who's still believed to be held in Gaza. Only 2 of the 102 hostages released so far were American, including 4-year-old Abigail Moore Idan, released over the weekend.
Now, the Israeli military said that more than 140 hostages remained in Gaza. I'm curious how they collect their intel on that, because some of the hostages that they believed were alive turned out to have been killed. Obviously, Hamas is saying one thing, the IDF is saying something completely different. In the fog of war, I'm not gonna repeat what either side has said in regard to what led to the death of these hostages. But you should keep in mind that the aerial bombardment in the Gaza Strip has been brutal, and Hamas, in the various videos that we saw on October 7th, really has no problem with carrying out brutal acts. So I don't know how those individuals died, and I'm not gonna repeat what each side is claiming. But with that said, according to the Israeli prison service, since the deal took effect Friday, Israel has released 210 Palestinians held in prisons in exchange for hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. The Palestinian Prisoners Society said Israel has arrested more than 240 Palestinians during the same time, which is exactly what you had predicted, Cenk, as these negotiations for the pause in fighting were taking place, right? When they made their initial deal, I remember you predicting that as Israel releases these prisoners, they're just gonna go ahead and detain more Palestinians. And look, it's one thing if Palestinians are carrying out acts of violence or if they're, harming other individuals. But I think it's really, really important to understand that a giant portion of those prisoners haven't even been charged with anything and remain detained indefinitely. Very similar to what the United States did and continues to do in Gitmo. There's still prisoners there who haven't been charged of anything. There's still prisoners in Gitmo who should be released and freed. That story is just brutal. But the same thing is happening right now as we speak with these Palestinians in the West Bank especially. So with that said, I wanna just go to one more video, Cenk, and then get your thoughts, because you don't have to believe me, I'm not on the ground, but you should believe the reporters who are on the ground. Let's take a look.
Israel says Fatma attempted murder, and yet she was only detained, not charged. She didn't go to trial. She wasn't given any opportunity to defend herself. And this is a story we keep hearing again and again from released prisoners, that they aren't given due process, and yet this crime exists alongside their names.
The Israeli Prison Service responded to these allegations, saying national security prisoners who were released from the Israeli prison during the past 2 days were serving time for serious crimes, such as attempted murder, assault, and throwing explosives. All prisoners in IPS custody are held according to the law. That's not true. CNN broke down the numbers in a list of 300 Palestinian prisoners identified by Israel as eligible for release. 80% are listed as just detained, which means they have not been formally sentenced.
They have not been formally sentenced and they're held in prison indefinitely. Palestinian Prisoners Society spokeswoman Amani Saraneh said that as of Thursday morning, more than 3,360 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank have been arrested since October 7th, with at least 40 arrested between Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning. And look, I mean, if they committed these crimes, you would want them to undergo a trial. You would charge them, number one, and then they would go through a trial, and you would either convict them or find them innocent. And by the way, they're not even given a typical trial. They have to, if they're lucky enough to get a trial at all, it's through a military court, and 90% of the time they're found guilty. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, actually, I want to give you the actual stat. It's 99%.
Jesus.
So if they try them, if they bother to charge them and try them, the military court's a rubber stamp. They're not even paying attention. 99% conviction rate, hilarious, right? So it's a joke, it's a total kangaroo court. It's just arresting random people, taking them hostage over and over again. But 80% of them were not even charged. They didn't even go to the kangaroo court. Like they're like, oh my God, we got nothing on them, nothing. Pure hostages, right? So we're not even gonna bring them to the court where we convicted 99% of them. So, and that's why I said what I said earlier that Anna was referring to. Israel takes hostages 24/7, thousands and thousands of hostages, right? But the world doesn't care. America doesn't care. America applauds. Oh yeah, dirty Palestinians, they must be guilty, they must be terrorists. They're all the same anyway, right? Well, who cares about charging them? Who cares about having fair court system? No, Israel is 100% oppressing the Palestinians. Thinking anything else is just absurd. You're just kidding yourself. You're just buying into propaganda. It's not even close. So speaking of terrorists, you know who's a terrorist? The Israeli National Security Minister. And I'm not saying that rhetorically. He's literally a convicted terrorist. Ben-Gvir, that Anna quoted earlier, who said, oh, the only thing that the Palestinians understand is violence. That's because Ben-Gvir is a monster and he only understands violence. He was convicted when he was younger of supporting a terror organization, Meir Kahana's group. And so you think that terrorist minds violence? He looks forward to violence. And the mindset is what's so horrible, which is they're not human on the other side. They're monsters and we should kill them all and we should take their land. And whether Hamas thinks that or the National Security Minister of Israel thinks that, it is the same exact ideology. The only difference is that Israel has infinitely more power. So they can kill and take hostages at their leisure.
Right.
And no one's gonna do anything about it. And so,
yeah,
since they're a state, they get to say, we are an important state. So when we do something and we murder civilians at unprecedented rates, it is not terrorism. It is us defending ourselves.
I just got to break down the numbers a little more for you because 128 of the 180 released prisoners at the time of this report were detained and had not been charged, put on trial, or given an opportunity to defend themselves.
So the bottom line is this prisoner exchange that they're doing. I mean, the Hamas should have never taken the hostages in the first place. Again, not only immoral, but dumb. When you take babies as hostages and grandmothers as hostages, you lose sympathy for your own people, you idiots, right? They take the soldiers as hostages, that's a different situation. There's a war going on, I hate that too, but at least you're not going after civilians, right? So Hamas has no morality or high ground to speak of at all. Now you turn to Israel, they're like, oh yeah, we'll do it at 10 times the rate, 100 times the rate, and we'll do a prisoner exchange. What difference does it matter anyway? I'm just gonna take more hostages the very next day, or the same day, and I'm gonna take even more than the ones I gave you. So the Palestinians are getting nothing in return, because more innocent people are gonna be kidnapped the next day by Israel.
I mean, they're getting a temporary pause in fighting, but that's it.
Yeah, to be fair, sorry. I meant in the prisoner exchange, right?
Agreed,
yes, they are getting a pause and I'm happy about the pause. And we'll take any wins that we can get.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us, become a Young Turk.